Yeshua ben Prachiv Niter Belu Kiblu Mihem. They had received the tradition from Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan, Ishu Shalayim. What did they receive? Yeshua ben Prachi Omer, Asei L'chorav. You should make for yourself a teacher. Choose a teacher for yourself. Uknei l'chochover, and acquire a friend. This is fundamental for one's function in life, to have a teacher and to have a friend. The teacher's understood. Teacher teaches you things that you didn't know. What's a friend? So the Rabbeinu Yonah explains here, we ourselves, we have many conflicts of interest. You have a teacher who teaches you. Let's say those teachings are somehow not in sync with what you want to do. The teachings that you taught by your teacher, by your Rebbe, are teachings which would not allow you to do what you want to do. So somehow we can't live with guilt because you give credibility to the teacher. So how do you somehow evade the reality of what you're not supposed to do? You say, the teachers at a more advanced level. This law is for a person who's on the level of my teacher. He's my Rebbe. I'm a commoner. I'm a peon. I'm a nothing. So the conflict of interest causes him to see it in this distorted way that the teaching of the teacher has no relevance to him. But what about if you have a friend, meaning a peer, and he's at your level? You can't somehow wiggle out by saying, well, my friend is not where I'm at, because your friend is no more advanced than you are. He's a peon or a commoner like you're a commoner. So if that's the case, a good friend, he'll tell his friend. And when he criticizes him or he tries to give him some level of direction, he can't say, well, you're at a more advanced level than I am, because they're peers. So the Rebbe is at one level, he has to teach you what you don't know. But when it comes in contradiction to what you want to do, you need the friend to be there to address those moments where you try to wiggle out and evade and say, it's not relevant to me because the rabbi is more advanced than I am. That's for the rabbi, that's for me. Well, God understands because that's the rabbi and I'm not the rabbi. But if you have a friend and your friend understands what you want to do, which is not in your best interest, he will tell you not to do it. And you can't respond, well, you don't understand. I understand very well. I'm at your level. And because the friend doesn't have the conflict of interest that the person who wants to cross that line, he could have the level of objectivity to direct him in the right direction. What's the expression? As kinei l'chorav. Choose a teacher. I say, make a teacher of yourself. Acquire a friend. What's the acquisition? If you have to buy a friend, what's the value of the friend? He's only a friend because you bought him. What's kinei l'chorav there? Acquire a friend. So Rabbeinu Yonah's commentary says, to be a good friend is not so simple. Why? A good friend will tell his friend what he doesn't want to hear. And very often, it actually strains the relationship. But because it's a true friend, he tells you what you have to hear, not what you want to hear. So therefore, there's a cost factor when you have a good friend. So that's the expression, acquire a friend. Although you may hear something that you don't want to hear, it doesn't make a difference. That type of person with that objective criticism is so essential in you walking that straight line, even though there are times where he ruffles your feathers, it doesn't make a difference. But since you know he's only telling you because it's your best interest, although you may not like it, you're going to accept it. Therefore, it's a combination of two. The teacher, the Rebbe teaches something that you're not aware of, which the friend can't teach you that. But even though the teacher teaches something you're not aware of and you're knowledgeable, you try somehow to evade it because of your conflicts. But the friend who's at your level doesn't have your conflict. He's able to redirect you and put you on that straight and narrow path. This is how Rabbeinu Yonah explains it. until recently. There's a word which is used. I don't know how often it's used, but I use it, and I've heard it used recently. It's called delusion. You delude yourself. People delude themselves. It's obvious and clear one way, but because of one's conflict, they delude themselves. The person lives delusionary. It's not reality. Because a conflict of interest can be so all-consuming, you could take day and turn it to night, and you could take anything and interpret it as you choose to interpret it, and you can live with it. And you can even convince others that it's the right path to take, as we see in today's society. Things just a year ago, 5 years ago, were unheard of, and all of a sudden today, people are embracing this way of life. It's not to be believed. But because they're people who are so corrupted in their values, and they have means and ability, and they take all these young people who are victimized by these people, and you have the masses embracing whatever this is, numbers have a tremendous level of effect. You don't want to break with the norm. Unfortunately, they tell you it's the norm, although it's not the norm. But if you have a good friend, he tells you differently. The story with On ben Pelis, Korach led a mutiny against Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the wealthiest Jew who ever lived. So he had that status. And he could affect people as he chose to affect them. And because of his conflict of interest, his arrogance, his pompousness, he felt offended. And therefore he went and he tried to destroy Moshe Rabbeinu. One of his cohorts, initially his name was On ben Pelis, and he was coming. He joined the group. And his wife says to him, you're a fool. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu is the leader today. Let's say Korach now becomes the leader. After you're part of this mutiny, and you overthrow Moshe, don't you realize you're the same nobody? Today you're a nobody, then you're going to be a nobody. What do you have to gain by being involved in this? So he says to his wife, but I'm so caught up. Once they come to get me, I can't extricate myself from the group. She says, leave it to me. So what did she do? She says, she gave him wine to drink. She tells him, go take a nap. And as Korach and his cohorts are coming down the street, they knock on the door, or they're about to approach. On ben Pelis' wife went, and they were very religious people, these people. She uncovered her hair. So a Jewish woman's supposed to have her hair covered. They wouldn't look. Korach and his group, they wouldn't look at a woman with her hair uncovered. So the moment they saw her sitting there with her hair uncovered, they turned the other direction. But she saw it so clearly. She says to us, oh, what do you have to gain by this? When people are caught up, you don't see the forest from the trees. It's all one big blur. So because she did not have this conflict of interest, she was not impressed with Korach. And besides that, he is her most important person. It's her husband. And she saw, what do you have to gain? She had that level of objectivity. Therefore, she could set him straight. When you have that good friend, and he doesn't have your conflict of interest, he could tell you straight that you're dead wrong, and the path you're taking is not unacceptable. But it's painful to hear that, and it'll strain the relationship. But because he's a good friend, he's not going to let up. And he's going to consider persist and not going to let you do it. Therefore, to be able to tolerate that, as they said, a good friend is a friend in indeed is when you're in need. When you're in need of certain things, and the man is willing to go to bat for you, whatever it means, that's a true friend. That's Knei L'Chochover. So not too long ago, maybe a year ago, I called up Rabbi Sushard, and I said, during the COVID, many things were happening in the world, terrible things. The world was a kettle boiling over. about to implode, explode every direction. The wars, there's no place where the things are, the upheavals around the world, the instability of governments. This is before October 7th. So I called him up. I said, he has this outreach organization. I said, I think we have to try to create a program. And this is even for very religious people. It's called Aseh L'Chorav. Even people who are very observant, they go to a shul, they go to a shtibel, they go to a synagogue, wherever you want to go. They themselves, because we're there in their life, why do they attend that particular synagogue? Do they submit to the position of the rabbi? Most of them don't. I enjoy davening there, the people, the sermon, the drasha, the kiddush, every reason but the right reason. It's not because the rabbi himself has such a level of clarity, and I don't make a move in Judaism without consulting with him. 99% of people are not there. They don't see the rabbi as their teacher. They don't see it as that because they studied in yeshiva. They can download it. They have all kinds of things, which gives them direction. And as a result of that, we have plenty of problems. People behave in a way which is unacceptable. They take on positions which are unacceptable. They raise their families not correctly, where they need. They'll go to a therapist, they'll go to a psychologist, and they'll have problems rather than sometimes consulting with the rabbi. And maybe if you would have consulted early enough and been a little more humble, you would have nipped it in the bud. But because they let it fester too long, now they really need serious professional help with the family. Maybe you're living too high on the hog. Maybe you're getting caught up with your success, with your ego. We just had. You succeed, all of a sudden you believe that you become the closest thing to God. I paid a rabbi's salary. I just gave to the building fund. I just gave to the federation. I could write a check the rabbi can't write, or this other guy, okay? But if you have Aseh L'Chorav, you have a teacher, and you don't make a move without the teacher, and you have a friend who could talk sense to you, and you have that balance, then you're in a good place. But if you don't have the Aseh L'Chorav and Chnei L'Chover, where are we? People are going in circles. So I called him, I said, do you think we could create such a program? Launch a program, Aseh L'Chorav. So he says, doesn't even know how to begin. But they begin, you have supporters. You can tell them they should submit to somebody's position. They'll go to a great rabbi for a bracha. Run to Reb Chaim Kanevsky, we need a blessing. You go to Reb Steinman, say, we need a blessing. Go to the holy rabbis, we need a blessing. You go to Rabbi Pinto when you have a problem. You don't go to him when you want some direction in life, where things are okay, but you want to make sure that you're walking the right path. People don't do that. But if you have Aseh L'Chorav, he's so integral to your life. You don't make serious decisions without consulting. So I'll tell you an unbelievable story. There was a person visiting Yad Avram from Detroit. He was a banker, very significant person. He built many things in the community there. The school, the high school, the this, the that. He's a member, he's on the board of Federation, National Federation. Very, very observant. So there was, and he called me up, and so he used to visit Yad Avram, and I shared this problem with him. I said, we have to have a program called Aseh L'Chorav. Make a teacher, you should have a mentor. Everybody needs a mentor to teach you, give you direction, and you submit to that person. And he heard it, and he's affiliated with Torah Besorah. Torah Besorah is the Orthodox day school movement. He's on the board there also. I said, could you imagine if we were able to institute this program, the Orthodox community would look totally different, rather than each person charting his own course, okay? So this story with him was about 4 or 5 years ago. Recently, after October 7th, because he was a member, he's on the board of Federation, I called him up, because he was able to, the Federation raised tremendous amounts of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, for the effort in Israel after the October 7th. So he says, I want to tell you a story. He says there was a little bit of a dispute among the people in Detroit regarding Jewish education, and they were all good people. They couldn't resolve it. So he said, we're going to go to Israel. We'll discuss it with Rav Steinman. Steinman had tremendous wisdom, and these are all business people. They traveled to Israel. They went to Bnei Brak. Then at the point they go to Rav Steinman. Rav Steinman, here's the question. He says, I'm not able to answer you, but go to Rav Chaim Kanevsky. He was alive at the time. Present it there. Maybe he'll give you some clarity on it, how to deal with it. They go to Rav Chaim Kanevsky, and Rav Chaim Kanevsky listens, and he gives them a solution, exactly how to deal with it. And all these people felt it was a good solution. Okay, phenomenal solution. So they say to Rav Chaim Kanevsky, when we go back to Detroit, we'll tell them this is what you said. They'll say, but maybe you're not giving it over accurately. Could you put it in writing and put your signature on it, that this is your solution, how to deal with it? You wouldn't believe the punchline. Rav Chaim Kanevsky knew the Torah in the entirety. Babylonian Talmud, Jerusalem Talmud, Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, there's nothing he didn't know. Every year he reviewed the Torah's entirety. Every Erev Pesach, he would make a siyum to celebrate the conclusion of Torah, which he reviewed every single year. Okay, including the Zohar, everything. So he says to them, when they asked him, could you put it in writing, put your signature, he says, I can't do it unless I have permission from my Rebbe. Rav Chaim Kanevsky was in his 80s at the time. Unless I have early 80s, unless I have permission from my Rebbe, I can't give you the ruling. You hear this? The man is the leading Torah sage in the world, but he can't put it in writing unless he has permission from his Rebbe. So he said, Rebbe, Rav Michael Yehuda Lefkowitz was Rav Chaim Kanevsky, which is a few years older than him. He was when he was a little boy, when he was a teenager. He was his Rebbe, and he always considered him his Rebbe, although today he knows more than him. But nevertheless, he does not do anything unless he has permission from his Rebbe. Could you imagine? And until that, I can't put it in writing. Do you understand how valuable this Aseh L'Kol Rav is? How that keeps you in place? If everything you do, you have to consult with your Rebbe, even though today you may know more than him, doesn't make a difference. That's one of the safety guards. That keeps you in check. You have the Rebbe, you have the friend. But I do deals my friend doesn't even understand. Doesn't make a difference. But when you want to do something, you have your conflicts of interest. Your friend who's your peer, and you value him, although he may not be as bright as you are, insightful as you are, but he has objectivity, and now you don't have that objectivity because you have that conflict of interest. So the conflict of Aseh L'Kol Rav or K'nei L'Kol Chaver is so valuable that they both have to be in place to be able to walk a proper path. Hi, Larry.
Don't know if I remember the question. Yeah, Rabbi. So you mentioned, again, let me begin by saying one has a doctor, family doctor for years, and you've known them 40, 50 years, and you consider them part of the family, but you don't just call and say, hi, doctor, how are you? They're busy. You call when you have a medical problem. I want to know, when you say you have a Rebbe, for what purpose do you arbitrarily check in or call a Rebbe? You've got to have a problem. And if you think you're living your life just fine, so you go about it. Okay.
Every day, we're not saying you call me up, say, Rebbe, by the way, what's the weather, based on the weather, what kind of shirt or what kind of coat or what kind of pair of shoes I should wear. You're not calling him for that. Everybody almost continuously has questions, whether it's a business question, whether it's a family dynamic question, whether it's a halachic question. Everybody has questions. See, if you minimize the question, then you have no question. Like you would say, does it really make a difference? Does it make a difference? You don't want to know something, but if you have a good friend, we spoke about acquire a friend. You may say, does it make a difference? He'll say, it does make a difference. When he tells you makes a difference, but he says, what do you know? He says, listen, but what do you know? So he says, go consult with the Rebbe, with the teacher. So if you have this this balance, the teacher with the friend, and a friend means people, they share things with one another. I'm doing a business deal. A person's in shul, and he doesn't behave properly. He has a disagreement with someone, and he believes he's right. Of course he believes he's right. His friend says, no, you are not right. He says, I think I was. What do you know? I'm as smart as you are. He says, why don't you go consult with the Rebbe? Goes to the Rebbe, independent. Rebbe says, Rebbe, you're at that special level. You're held it. You have a greater degree of accountability. I'm not you. Therefore, that mode of behavior is not expected of me. So you consult with your friend. And what does he say? He says, the Rebbe is right on. Because it's post facto, you have a conflict of interest. Therefore, you put up the shield not to accept, you deflect the criticism, although it's constructive criticism, but you don't want to be put in a bad light. So you consult with your friend. Friend says he's right. So if you have both things in place, and we're not talking about a person who lives on a desert island, nobody knows what's going on. He has relationships. Person says, I'm going on a vacation. It cost me so much. Person says, something, it's okay to go on vacation, but today there's so many people are hurting. Maybe you should go on a tone down the vacation and give part of the money to charity and help families that don't have the means just to put food on the table, rather than going on this extravagant vacation. Says, something, I think I deserve it. I said, a friend says, something, go consult with the Rebbe. So I'm saying, if you have both things in place, you understand very often you want to delude yourself that there is no problem, there is a problem. And a problem doesn't mean say it's a problem. It means it's not acceptable because you should actually live on a higher standard. It's not standard of living. Morally, ethically, more is expected of you. Rather than play the humility game, says, who do you think I am? Do you think I'm a great tzaddik? It's expected of every Jew. There's a certain mode of behavior. There's a certain standard. It's expected. Not try to wiggle out of it. So the friend gives him a direction. As much as he wants to deny it, the friend doesn't let up because he says, I'll check it out with the Rebbe. Okay, check it out. Sure enough, the friend is right. So therefore, it's the infrastructure of a Jewish life should be teacher, friend, good friend. Not he's going to tell you what you want to hear. Not all rabbis are qualified to answer every type of question. Certain rabbis, their expertise is definitive law. Other rabbis, they have sage wisdom. Therefore, as a result of that, they understand the family dynamic. Another rabbi may not understand the family dynamic as this other rabbi understands. See, each rabbi has his area of expertise. Certain decision. I'll give you an example. In Israel, when Rav Steinman was alive, Zechat Tzaddik Livrocha, Rav Michal Yehuda, these people, Rav Michal Yehuda's his area of expertise, not that he didn't have other areas, was anything that had to do with the infrastructure of a yeshiva, students, how they should be taught. When you had a problem with a student, how the teacher should deal with it, whatever, that was his expertise. Rav Steinman had he had expertise there too, but each one had their area of expertise. So sometimes you have a rabbi, he's a pastoral rabbi. He could service the community at a certain level. But many of these rabbis, they think they are qualified in other areas, which they're not. And they themselves realize how not qualified they are. So you have to be smart enough that he's not all what you need. You have to go somewhere else. Give you an example without mentioning names. Boys from New York, I'm not going to mention the school, they go to study in Israel after they graduate high school. And they went to Rabbi Bina's yeshiva called Nativ Aryeh, and they become more observant there, more careful with their Judaism. And they were told that when they date girls, until they're married, there should not be any physical contact between the male and the female. No physical contact, which is the halacha. Okay? So when a certain rabbi heard this, he wrote them personal letters. It's extreme. He wrote certain students letters because the parents found out about it. They were upset. They went to speak to the rabbi, and they said they're brainwashing our children in Israel. So he went and wrote these kids letters. It's not to that degree. Right now you think that, in that milieu, it's that, but you realize you're not going to be living in that milieu. You're coming back. It's okay. You understand? This rabbi is not qualified. Not qualified. And he didn't, if he knew it was totally wrong, he wouldn't have said it. Because he thought, it's being extremely religious. But you can be religious even if you do. You cross that line. That's what he believed. Although he's dead wrong. Wrong. So that rabbi, which sometimes he showed his colors, that he didn't belong in certain areas, which he offered opinions. So it was clear. And many other examples of this. In that area, you have to go consult with another rabbi. Not, you have an internist, and your person has a cardiology issue. The internist is not qualified. You have to go to the expert in that area. Every person has his expertise. So you have to know exactly who you're talking to, who the teacher is for a ruling. Right? It gives you a ruling. It gives you a ruling, and when it gives you a ruling, you're going when you ask them to accept his position. And now you don't like what you heard. And you want to now go shop it around. And look for a more lenient opinion. And even though the other person you go to is no less qualified than the first rabbi, you can't change your position. You have to accept the first ruling. What about the second rabbi you go to? Is so much greater than the first rabbi that if the first rabbi would know that the second rabbi would rule leniently, he would retract his more severe, more extreme position. Then you follow the second position. Give you an example. A rabbi gives you a ruling, says you're not permitted to do it. Okay? You're bound. You can't shop it around. Now you go to Ramosha Feinstein. And he says it's permitted. If the first rabbi would know that Ramosha Feinstein said it's permitted, he would retract. So since he himself would retract, you're not bound to that decision. But if you have two rabbis, they're peers. And even if he would know the second rabbi gave more, he would not retract. Then you're bound to the first position.